Hey everyone, welcome to the Unhandled Exception podcast. I'm Dan Clark, and this is episode number 76. And I'm very excited today to be joined by Maddy, I'm hoping I'm going to pronounce this correctly, Montaquila?
Nailed it. That was very good. Yeah, Montaquila.
I default say Montaquila, like the alcohol, but then it's kind of, I don't know why.
I get Montaquilla a lot too, which apparently is like close to the word for butter in Spanish, but it's my husband's name. He's Italian, good old Italian-American boy, you know, and so he's Montaquila.
Fair enough. Was that one of the conditions of getting married, that the surname has to sound like an alcoholic spirit?
Yeah, there has to be like at least 17 vowels in every single name in the family, I think, and that's how they pick. But no, I mean, I had a hard to pronounce name before, and now I have a hard to pronounce name again, and so I just traded it in for a different nationality.
Well, my wife's surname turned to Clark, which is the most boring surname on the planet. So it's
easy. Dan Clark. You can't mess that up.
You can't, but it's the most commonest name on the planet. I can't actually believe I've got danclark.com as a domain name.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. I can't get Maddy.net. I've tried.
Oh, really?
So, yeah. But anyways, okay, podcast.
Yes, that's true. That's true. So I've not actually said what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to talk about the amazing .NET Aspire, which is so good. So yeah, welcome to the show, Maddy.
Yay, thank you. I'm excited. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're most welcome. Thank you for coming on. I've been really looking forward to this. And to be honest, I'm a little bit nervous because, as you know, I've just finished recording a Dome Train course on Aspire, and I'm terrified that you're going to tell me in version 9.3 of Aspire, everything's changing.
Yeah, all of it.
And then I've got to record it all over again. And
every single thing. Busted. Just for you.
I need to put some scary sound effects in the background now, like from like a horror film or something.
Pew, pew, pew. Wow, wow.
What kind of horror films have you been listening to or watching?
That's actually a good question. I've just caught up on The Last of Us. So that's my latest stress. Very good. Did not sleep. Very good.
Oh, I feel I need to watch that now.
Yeah, it's good.
We should probably talk about .NET Aspire, I guess, but I want to know more about Last of Us. But anyway, also, I saw on the socials the other day that it's a happy belated birthday.
Yes! Oh my gosh, thank you. Yep, my birthday is Earth Day. I share my birthday with the Earth.
Oh, nice.
It's kind of hard to one-up, but it's fine.
We talk about pronouncing surnames. I think it was posted by Joseph Guadagno, probably butchering his name, but I think he said happy birthday on Blue Sky, so I saw that. So I thought, yeah, happy belated birthday.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Good.
So I'm guessing most of the listeners have probably know who you are, but for those that don't, could you give us a quick intro into what you do?
Yeah, for the blessed folks who haven't heard me before. Now you have. Congratulations. I'm Maddy. I am a product manager on the .NET team. I now am the product lead of .NET Aspire. Previously, in my past life, I was on Xamarin and Maui and part of that whole evolution, transition, rebrand. My focus has almost always been on the tooling side. And so Aspire was a new challenge because Aspire is platform, but it's also kind of a tool, even though it's a platform stuff. And so I've been really, really enjoying it. I get like infinitely frustrated by dev tools sucking. And that has been the driving force behind my career. So that's kind of how I've stuck in this .NET land so long. Yeah.
Well, I'd definitely say with tooling, Aspire for me has been a game changer. So, but we'll get into that in a bit. Yeah. But before we do dig into Aspire, though, just a few small reminders for the listeners. Firstly, this podcast has its own Discord community. If you head over to the website unhandledexceptionpodcast.com, you'll see a big Discord link there. Also, I have a monthly newsletter where I send out handpicked dev news items from the past month. It's quite .NET biased, but also covers other dev stuff too. And it also includes a dev tip and a dev comic pick, as well as podcast updates about the show. If you want to sign up, there's a subscribe link on the podcast website. And lastly, a quick reminder that this podcast is sponsored by Everstack, which is my own company providing software development and consultation services. For more information, visit everstack.com. So for listeners that haven't heard of Aspire and don't know what it is, throughout this episode, I'd quite like to dive into lots of different things, but I feel like we should really start at the beginning for those listeners that haven't heard of it. Could we just, what is Aspire?
That's a great question. That will be the rest of the episode. No, the official kind of sentence that we have decided on is Aspire is a set of tools, templates, and packages for modern, distributed, observable. We kind of tweak the adjective to fit who we're talking to for those kinds of apps. And by modern, distributed, whatever, basically anything that has to talk to an internet service, whether that's hosted in the cloud or on Azure, AWS, or on a VPS. What Aspire does is it orchestrates your entire stack in a modular and kind of flexible way. So you can tell exactly what needs to happen at F5 time for a local developer. And it makes it so that you can clone an F5. It's kind of like Docker Compose on steroids, and it's heavily typed because it's in C#. So it's not YAML, which no hate, no hate, but kind of nice. Yeah. And then there's a whole bunch of other things to it. One of the key components of Aspire is the integrations. So they're NuGet packages, right? They're not magic, but you pull them in and they do the bootstrapping of the things for you. So you can add Redis and it will bootstrap Redis and it will turn on things like OpenTelemetry and resiliency handling and logging. And so then when you hit F5, you can see all your services, your APIs, your front ends, your projects, your Docker containers, databases, endpoints, whatever, in a dashboard and see all of the telemetry flowing between them at local dev. And then we have a deployment story, which is the thing that is going to ruin your Dome train course the most because it is so we keep changing our minds and we are shipping a lot of cool stuff. But I think it still has a long way to go for maturity. The easy stuff for deployment is you can just do AZD init, AZD up, and we worked with the Azure Developer CLI, AZD. Oh, sorry, AZD to you, which is impossible to say. AZD. Ugh, I hate it.
That was a running joke in the course as well. I kept having to correct myself.
AZD. That's what you got to do. But it's the Azure Developer CLI. And so that team worked really closely with us to, if you run AZD in an Aspire-ified repo, it can pick up that it's Aspire and deploy it to Azure Container Apps all in one contained environment. So that works great. If that works for you, if you want container apps and you want it all in a virtual network so it's super secure and really just kind of foolproof, use that. But we're working now on a more extensible, flexible deployment story for the folks of you who love to hate yourselves and want Kubernetes or insert thing here. So,
well, what you say about Kubernetes, Azure Container Apps is Kubernetes. So it feels like at the moment you're deploying to either Kubernetes or you're deploying to Kubernetes one way or another anyway.
Yeah, it's Kubernetes, but it's how much you have to know about it,
Yeah, that's true.
It's Kubernetes with extra steps, if you will. So,
well, I quite like I'm sure we'll talk more about deployment and stuff, but I know it's moving away from being a separate project now, but the Aspirate project.
Aspirate.
I knew you'd pronounce it wrong somehow.
It's okay. We crack up because Aspirate is when you can't breathe and you have to in a medical situation. And so we can talk way about this if you want. I could talk about this forever, but Dave Sekula, who's Prometheus on GitHub, who built Aspirate, has actually been working really, really closely with us on bringing all of that into Aspire proper. And he's been integral in the deployment story and the design of it. And so we're super thankful for that. He's been awesome. We are so lucky we have him. So
that's awesome. Before we move on to deployment, I'm aware that some of the listeners who might have not even seen Aspire before, we've kind of dumped a whole load of stuff on, and that sounds really, really, really complicated. And one of the things that strikes me with Aspire is it's not, as in the code base I'm using in the course, I basically made up a podcast listing app, effectively.
Oh.
And when we start, it's just not using Aspire at all. So there's a Blazor front end, an API backend, a work EF migration. So there's a few things, and then throughout the course we had another API and a Redis cache as well. And then obviously there's a database, which in the very first video that starts to show this code base, we're using Docker Compose to spin up the database locally and everything. Then I start to add the Aspire things like the app host project and the service defaults project over the course and adding more stuff to it. And when we add Aspire, the Docker Compose goes away, completely goes away. And having to run all of these different things goes away. As you said earlier, you can just F5 or .NET Run, and the whole thing just lights up. So that's so good for onboarding new developers. And I'm using it for one of my a few of my client projects, but one particularly, which I was working on today. Before, I had a whole bunch of stuff like where I would do a doc compose up. I also ended up with this weird Windows terminal profile setup where I could launch it and it would have lots of different split terminals, so I could run all the different parts of it in different terminals. And all that has gone away. None of the Docker stuff, none of those. I literally just load up Rider, press F5, and it all spins up, including database seeding and all of that kind of thing. And the Aspire changes to my project, it's literally adding two project templates, this app host, the service defaults, and that's it. You change the startup project to be the app host, F5. You get this dashboard, which you mentioned before, which shows all the open telemetry stuff just there. And all the open telemetry is already set up, so I didn't have to do that. And it's just incredible. So you get all this stuff, but it's just no work. It takes, if you use the tool and set it up, it takes seconds to add it to your solution.
Yeah, it's mind-boggling, and it feels so magical. And so people are afraid of it because they're like, this must take forever to set up, or, oh, this must be like a replatforming, or how much do I have to rewrite, or how locked into this am I, or like, does this make me have to use Azure or have to use .NET or whatever? No, it's not. It's just code. You just comment out what you don't want. Like, it's crazy. I keep telling people, I'm like, if you don't want something in the service defaults, you do this very magic thing. You put 2 slashes in front of the function, and then all of a sudden it goes away. And they're like, oh, you just commented out. I'm like, if you really want to get fancy, you could do if.
So what's this if technology?
Yeah. So if you have 2 choices now.
Hopefully the listeners know that. But
I hope. If not, that's okay too. That's fine. But
yes, totally. Yeah. So you mentioned about like you can pick and choose what you want as well. That goes even further because the dashboard we're talking about, there's a standalone version. So even if you don't want to put Aspire into your application at all, you can still use the dashboard, which I've done with another of my clients where it was kind of, we're not in a place to actually start integrating fully Aspire stuff in, but we're already using OpenTelemetry. And we were having, locally, we'd have Docker Compose stuff, which would spin up the Grafana stack, like Grafana, Prometheus, Jaeger, an OpenTelemetry collector and all of that stuff. And so our code base was sending OpenTelemetry data to localhost anyway. So got rid of all that stack I just mentioned, spinning up like a PowerShell script, which literally does Docker run and like launches a container for the standalone dashboard. None of our code changed whatsoever because it was already right into localhost, and the dashboard lit up. And we're using that heavily now for local development, so we can actually see traces and metrics and everything locally whilst developing.
That's awesome.
For me, that's one of the killer features of it with OpenTelemetry, because traces, I'm kind of making assumptions listeners know what traces are. Maybe we can get into that in a bit. But quite often in the past with traces, they're useful, but I would see them in production deployed somewhere and it's kind of, okay, that's useful, but it's not giving me enough information. But now I'm seeing it whilst developing, so I can take my spans and think, what extra information can I intentionally in my code? What attributes and properties can I add to that span to give me more information? Or what intentional child spans can I add? And because I'm seeing that right there whilst I'm developing a feature, so I'm thinking, right, how can I make this span nicer? So if something happens in production, I can look at that trace, that request, because quite often I'm doing API stuff, and know exactly what happened in there. I've got properties showing what's the order ID, or what's the different things that have business context around that request. And that is just game changing to me.
Yeah, it's really, really cool. And the dashboard is not a replacement in production for like Grafana or Prometheus or whatever. It's not meant to be the most fully featured thing in the world, but it is meant to be really easy and just easy to click around and find things and investigate exactly like what you're saying. Like say, oh yeah, I should probably add some more metrics here. And then test that all locally instead of having to wait for the deployment to spin up and go through and then make sure everything is flowing correctly. we had the Xbox team at Microsoft that built a bunch of their like central services. They were doing a .NET framework to .NET Core migration, which I'm sure you have done plenty of for your clients because they are never ending. But yeah, so they were modernizing their like telemetry along with it. And what they were doing before Aspire was deploying the new .NET Core app, waiting the 3 or 4 days for it to do the builds and spin up and tests and validation and deployment and blah, 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 blah. And then they would realize they like misspelled a telemetry property and it wasn't showing up in their data. And they had to go and spin up a new deployment to fix literally telemetry. So they'd either, stash it and wait or push a bunch out at once. But I hate the term shift left. I think it is very obnoxious, but that's exactly what it's doing. It is shifting telemetry left so that at dev time, you actually know the things that you're going to be collecting in your app instead of as an afterthought, which it usually is for most of us. So it's nice to not actually have to worry about it. Yeah.
It does feel like there's a lot more. I agree with you with that term shift left, but even like most developers now do write tests, where if you go back 5-10 years, that wasn't a thing, where now more developers are thinking about observability. Or I don't know whether it's because like, we're obviously in a bubble where we're like active on socials and networking and things, whether the people we speak to actually do think about open telemetry and observability and doing TDD and all the right things you should be doing. But then maybe that is because we're in a bubble, and maybe a lot of developers are still using what's the source safe. That's the one I was trying to think of. Exactly.
Yeah, it depends. I mean, it's the .NET ecosystem is so huge and so not old. Old sounds bad, but it's been around. It's mature. That's the word I'll use. That you will find anything. We talked to a customer at MVP about a month ago. And obviously I'm not going to share any details about like them or their company, but they were not deploying the executable. They were cloning the source in the container in the cloud that was deployed and then doing Docker run. And that was their production code base. And they were like, it's just the way that we had to make it work. And I was like, what are we doing on this planet? So trust me, I'm sure that no matter how, for all you listeners, especially my framework friends, you might have a lot of skeletons in your closet. There are probably people with more somewhere. So don't worry. But write tests. Do that.
I wish I had thought then to press print screen and grab a screenshot of your expression when you were saying, what were you doing?
Exactly.
That would have been a perfect, what do you call it, caption combo.
Thumbnail. It was very funny. We were talking about it. We were like, that can't be right. Right? Nope, that's it. Okay, cool. That sounds awesome. If it works.
Yeah, to the listeners, if you're doing anything really funky and interesting like that, add a comment to this podcast episode and just tell us, because this stuff is really fun. I know we're joking about it, but it's actually really interesting, the kind of different things that, like workarounds that people have and you see in companies. So yeah, just leave a comment. That'd be really interesting to hear. You mentioned before about tooling, and I know .NET 9.2, there was this shiny thing called the Aspire CLI. And I know when we spoke the listeners can't see Maddy at the moment, but she's getting quite excited. But yeah, when we were chatting a couple of weeks ago, I know that you were talking about one of the goals you really want is to get people that aren't .NET developers to start using this. And presumably this is Aspire CLI because you're not running .NET Aspire, you're just running Aspire. Is that for that goal?
Yeah. And so your audience, I'm imagining mostly .NET, right? So let me just get this out of the way. .NET people, we love you. We're not abandoning you. Okay. Just because we're trying to make new friends doesn't mean that our friendship is over. And what's good about people like Dan, who just recorded a Dome Train course on this whole thing, is we don't intend on changing the existing .NET experience very much because it works. Like, yeah, swipe sweat. It works. There are definitely improvements. We're going to continue improving things. But we realized that keeping Aspire kind of behind the .NET wall, isn't that helpful for .NET? Because we can just build tools for .NET people forever. It's not going to actually grow the platform until we start. I've been joking. I've been saying we're microdosing .NET. So like trickling it into other people and changing their perception. Because there's some Reddit thread that was a couple weeks ago that was like, no VCs will invest in us because we want to use .NET. And I was like, oh, That's, first of all, any VC that's asking you what language you're writing shouldn't invest in your startup anyways. That's just ridiculous. But that is a real concern, right? People think .NET is Windows only. And we had someone last year be like, I can't write a linked list from scratch, so I don't think .NET's for me. And I was like, what are you talking about? I don't even know what planet you're on. Oh, well, we're all on Linux, so we can't use .NET. And so as much as we in the .NET community know that .NET is the best and amazing and everyone should use it, and we're in it and we're seeing all of these developments, the rest of the world does not realize. And so what we started looking at was how we could use Aspire, as we've been joking, you know, the meme with the Trojan horse, and it's like the thing and then inside is whatever. So the Trojan horse is Aspire and inside is .NET. And that's part of it, right? Like broadening .NET's appeal. But more importantly, it's growing Aspire, because Aspire is a super useful tool for everybody. And as more people become polyglot, so JavaScript front-end, .NET backend, or Python AI stuff, or you have one team that likes to write their services in Go and one team that writes their services in .NET, and this other front-end team over there that's using a different JavaScript flavor every week. Aspire can actually make all of those people's lives easier, but only the .NET team is going to look at it, because everyone else is going to be like, I'm not putting .NET in my app. Gross. And we're like, no! So all of that to say, yes, the CLI is the first really big step to un.netify, perhaps is the verb, un.netify the Aspire experience. And again, we're not going to ruin what exists for .NET. Like .NET, especially VS Rider, .NET developers tend to be really IDE heavy. It works. We're going to keep fixing things and making new features, but it's not like it's missing some huge feature gap besides deployment, which will work for everybody. What we're looking at now is how to make a VS Code and CLI first experience really, really comfortable, no matter what ecosystem you're coming from. And we're focusing on JavaScript and Python first. I think Go will probably come along. Java, maybe, but if you're using Java, you're not going to use .NET. So we think that people using something like JavaScript would actually see .NET and all that it does for you, and actually realize, oh, that's actually pretty helpful. But Java people, they're in your own world. Go away. I'm kidding, former Nick Chapsis. But yeah, right now the CLI is really basic. It's in preview. You can use it. It's a .NET tool right now. It's run, new, add, which basically hides all the NuGet stuff and lets you just pick Aspire-based NuGet packages without realizing it's NuGet. And then publish, which is the beginning of this deployment story. But we're going to native AOT it. So it's going to be a small executable. And we're going to put it on Homebrew and Winget and download from a website. Meaning you don't have to have any .NET on your machine to get and use this CLI and thus Aspire. And that is the first step in the crazy world domination plans we have. So yeah. The reason that we're really focused on this is A, because we want .NET to rule the world, which is obviously our greatest motivation. But B, because we heard from so many .NET customers that they were trying to get other parts of their company or their org to standardize on Aspire, and they wouldn't because they thought it was too much of a heavy lift to pull .NET in fully. So they're like, our backends are all Aspire-ified, but we can't get the front-end team to cooperate. Or our service is Aspire, but there's this other service team and they won't Aspire-ify it, and we really want to use it for the full stack, and they don't want to pull .NET in. And we're like, but it's not even anything anymore. It's like a couple hundred megs. It's smaller than an app on my phone. And they're like, yeah, but it's the project file and blah, 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 blah. So there's a whole bunch of other things we're doing besides the CLI. So yeah, I'll ramble about those if you want, but I'll stop there for now.
Well, I'm just kind of thinking out loud and thinking about other ways that Aspire might help with this. And if you've got like a team where you've got like front-end developers that are maybe doing like React or that kind of thing, and then you've got back-end developers doing .NET. In the past, without Aspire, you maybe like the back-end stuff would be deployed to a dev cluster or something somewhere, and they would only be in VS Code doing just the React stuff and not seeing any .NET. Where with Aspire, if it's easy just to type Aspire run and it spins it all up, including the .NET, then those front-end developers that aren't .NET developers, if they need to make a small back-end tweak because it's just there and they can run it locally, then they're kind of also they're not .NET developers, they're front-end developers, but they're seeing the .NET in the project that they wouldn't have normally seen before, but now because of Aspire they are. So that might be another way of just getting, even though obviously that would have to be in their architecture in the first place, .NET would have to be there. Those front-end developers that are only seeing doing the front-end stuff are now just experiencing how good .NET is. So if they move to another company or they're speaking with other front-enders, they can be like, actually, this .NET thing's pretty good.
Yeah. It's so funny, like the amount of times we've talked to someone about .NET, and sometimes we try to lead with C#. We don't even say .NET, and people are already more open to hearing about it, which, for a modern .NET dev that's been in the journey, we know .NET, Core CLR, this common language thing, it's like mostly C#. There are other languages, but it's really C# first. You show them like a C# minimal API file, and they're like, oh, what language is this? That looks nice. And you're like, it's .NET. And they're like, huh? What? That? Oh, wow. That's really clean. Where are all the files? And I'm like, we don't do that anymore, my friends. Like, you pull in a package and it works. And they're like, wow, that's amazing. And then with Aspire, because so much of the logging and telemetry and service discovery and poly stuff is built into .NET and we turn it on for you, it's just super fully featured right off the bat. One of the things we're looking at is how to bring the concept of service defaults to other languages and ecosystems. So every JavaScript app has scaffolding or JS or TypeScript files for their linter or config for the dev tools or something. So there's always like a Vite config or a Babel or an ESLint. We're like, do we just add it on a Aspire one? And that's the service defaults in JavaScript? Can we do that? Is that allowed? I don't know. What if we put it on NPM? Is that crazy? Well, Python people don't really do scaffolding files, so we'll probably put that on pip, but can we just put... So these are all the questions we're now experiencing as a team. And we know we're .NET people, right? People across the company, as we've been starting to talk about this more and share more of what we're doing, they're like, you guys are the .NET team? You cannot build things for JavaScript. That's not what you do. And we're like, no. We're talking to people. Believe it or not, my job as a product manager is to talk to customers. And I am now talking to customers who are not .NET people, and we are learning. And we're also talking to the folks internally who built TypeScript and build VS Code. And the folks on AZD, the CLI, that's a Go CLI. It's great. I think it's Go. I'm 99% sure it's Go. I should really have checked, but that's fine. If I lied, I lied. Go look at the repo. It's open source. And, other service teams or the office team does a lot of JavaScript on the front, .NET on the back. And we're talking to these people about what would actually be useful for them for Aspire to do. We're not just shoving .NET in places. We have like a set of principles. And the last one is don't do what you think you should do immediately. Just question first. So it's fun. Questions
are always the answer. I can't remember who said that, but
I like that. Questions are always the answer. I'm going to use that.
I'm going to have to find where I got that from because it was from some podcast and I can't remember who it was.
Oh my God.
I think it was Jim Quick.
Oh.
Do you know who I mean?
Yeah. That's awesome.
I think he came up with that somewhere. He's got so many different of these catchphrases and things.
I love those.
So going back to the deployment side, because we've spoken quite a lot about local development and also the open telemetry stuff. And I know prior to 9.2 that there was this manifest JSON file that got dumped out. And am I right that it was just expected that vendors kind of have to parse this complicated JSON file and do something with it? And that's where, at that point in time, before 9.2, that's where Aspire's responsibility ended?
Mm-hmm. So I'll give you the quick history too, because that's what's the fun of the podcast is I tell the things that I don't tell on the official Microsoft channels, which was when Aspire was conceived. And this was actually before I had come over and joined the team, which was about a year ago now. They did not have a deployment story at all. And one of the, leadership in .NET and the developer division at Microsoft was like, you're telling me you're shipping something that's for cloud developers and there's no deployment tooling in it? And they were like, oh, yeah, that's probably bad. So AZD stepped up and did a bunch of work with us and, made this thing happen. And so we started that way. And then we had a bunch of internal teams using it. And, at any big enterprise, you cannot just AZD up. That's not how it works. And Microsoft, of course, we have a million security and compliance and governance hooks that we have to jump through for any deployment of any service internally. And we have an internal deployment tool chain pipeline thing that is notoriously the worst thing ever. Like, it's one of those things you bring up and you're like, oh, so how's your thing going? And people are like, and just creating those artifacts by hand is really timely. And there's usually one person on every org or team that just like knows how it works. And then that's, if that person goes on vacation and deployment breaks, you just go, oh no deployments this week. Oh, well, really, really complicated. And so that was the driving force behind us taking a step back and looking at what we're doing with the manifest. And obviously externally, we were hearing, we want Kubernetes, we're super Terraform first, we're super Pulumi first. We need to integrate with that. And so we took a step back and we started thinking about what we're calling publishers. So the thing that creates the artifacts that get deployed. This is the first step. So not the actual stick it in the cloud, move the bits from A to B. We still think that you're going to do that in your CI/CD or whatever tooling you use to do that today. But the actual artifact creation, the JSON or the bicep or the YAML, we know Aspire can do that because it's really just translating. And Aspire has a set API surface area of what you can define. And everything bubbles down to primitives that are containers or executables. And everything that Aspire does that's magic at the end of the day is environment variables. And all of those things you can put in any deployment artifact, script, whatever you want to call it. So we had the manifest, the JSON originally. And that's still kind of the central default, like that will always exist as our source of truth, air quotes. But what we're building are these publishers that can look at the app host and translate them into the right thing. And so now we have in preview in 9.2, we have Docker Compose. So it just spits out compose.yaml or YML and the very beginnings of a Kubernetes one. And then a genericized Azure one. So it doesn't play nicely with AZD yet, mostly because we just wanted to see if it was going to work at all. And it did. But now we have to reconcile all the differences that we've made because we just did things. And then internally, we've actually already been shipping now and teams are using the one we built for the internal deployment mechanism. And we used that as the big test for it. Because if we could do this ridiculous historic internal deployment tool that everybody at Microsoft uses, we can figure out Kubernetes, right? How hard can it be? Cries.
That's quotable. But Kubernetes, how hard could it be?
How hard can it be? Yeah. At the very least, we think we can. My personal vendetta, I really want Terraform. I think having Aspire be able to plug in Terraform modules and export Terraform modules would be so powerful. But soon. Not yet. Soon.
Yeah, that's very cool. Just taking a little step back for the listeners that haven't used it before, seen it before. This app host we've spoken about before is obviously can add more classes to it, but typically it's like a program.cs, a very clean, fluent chain syntax for each of your, they call them resources, where a resource might be your front end, one might be your API, like so your .NET project, and they can also be containers as well. But basically, we've got this program.cs, this app host, which describes your entire architecture in a very clean format. So locally, it knows what to spin up, but also when you're deploying. So I just thought I'd take that step back so that the listeners know that when we're deploying, it's still looking at that same program.cs in your app host project to know what your architecture is and to know what to deploy. But I totally agree with Terraform. I know what you've got at the moment with AZZ up does like bicep stuff. But yeah, I think Terraform would be a really, really big win.
Yeah. You should teach a class or something about Aspire. You're very good at explaining it.
I might do a course actually.
Maybe that would be crazy. One thing that's cool about the app host is at the end of locally for runtime locally at the end of the day, every resource boils down to a container or an executable, and an executable means .NET run or npm run dev or I don't know execute script blah blah blah. You can also like add endpoints, but those at the end of the day, like connection strings to something that exists in the cloud already, really at the end of the day, those are just environment variables that you're representing in code. So when you think about Aspire, everything is a container or an executable. And we put layers on top of these things. And that's where those integrations come in. So the .NET, the add project syntax for adding a .NET project is a layer on top of this executable thing. If you want to run the .NET project in a container, go right ahead. I think we have like .as container now, actually. And then on the other hand, if you want to pull in our Redis integration that turns a bunch of stuff on, and you pick the image and the tags and all that, go nuts. If you just want to add a container and give it a Docker file that spins up the Redis container that you like, go right ahead. It all boils down to those as the primitives, which is really cool.
And today's sponsor is the Google Patch Rewards program, which is focused on incentivizing proactive improvements to security in open source projects. So far, the Patch Reward program, which is run by a small team of devs based in both Switzerland and the US, has awarded over $1 million to security-minded contributors worldwide. Want to get involved and contribute to improving the security of open source, and also get a financial reward for doing so? All you need to do is submit a security improvement to an in-scope open source project, and if that patch is accepted, you'll get paid anything from $100 to $45,000, depending on the complexity and the impact of your patch. It's really that simple. So head over to g.co/PRP to find out more and submit your first patch. Another thing so just completely changing tangents now from deployment is, which I'm guessing a lot of people that play with Aspire might not have looked at, is the test story. So if you're writing automated tests, and I've got a section in the course which demos like using that web application factory beforehand without using Aspire, so doing .NET integration tests, but then switching over to using the distributed version, the .NET Aspire one, where actually running the test spins up your entire app host to run the tests against it. And again, that's just running the tests. And that is such an amazing story as well, because that, like, with the integration tests, like before Aspire and everything, one of the great things about it was that you could not have to mock out things like SQL Server and all these dependencies because you can spin them up in Docker. And I'm finding the Aspire test takes that to the next level, because your downstream services, all different services that are part of your .NET solution, are also spun up when you're testing one of the APIs. And it's just really, really good. So yeah, but I'm guessing most people haven't played with that side of things yet, but there is a module in the course about that.
Oh, good. Okay, good. That's an easy thing for me to point people to. It's super powerful. We never talk about it because we are always doing new, fun, exciting things like building new deployment mechanisms, right? So we just keep being like, oh yeah, testing is great. Go use it. It's great. And people are like, whoa, this is actually really cool. We're like, oh yeah, it is kind of cool, actually. The latest feature that we have heard is people want to be able to mock resources, which I think would be really cool. Basically mock, but for containers. And wouldn't it be awesome if you could say in your Aspire app host for testing, add Redis with API surface or .as mock or whatever it is, and it just pretends to create it and it doesn't actually create it. And that will be really helpful in CI scenarios. We have not built it, but I bring it up because people are going to be like, oh, can I do this? And I'll be like, one day, go put it on the GitHub issue and tell us, and then we'll build it.
That's a really good idea, because quite often you might have a third-party API that you just don't have it. It's just hosted somewhere.
Yep.
And if you in your app host, if like you mentioned Redis, but not Redis, but if you could do like mock external service or something, I don't know what you'd call it, and then you give it a JSON file or something, which is a local set of requests and responses that you're expecting, so you can hard code those expectations, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. It would save people time, money, and effort, which are the things that we care about as developers. So we'll probably, once we take over the world, we'll probably build that.
Next week, then.
Yeah, next week.
9.3.
Yeah. By .NET Conf, well, it's just whatever. I'm going to vibe code it this week.
Oh, you're joking about AI and stuff, but am I allowed to say, because I know like a couple of weeks ago you were saying about adding AI stuff.
When is this going to release?
In just over a week, but it can be a bit later, I guess.
You can't talk about it till build. So I can tease it, but I can't actually tell you what we're doing until properly. AI is cool and does a lot of stuff, and it can help with development, believe it or not. And so we're looking at actually quite a few different ways of how to improve the AI story with Aspire. There is a very exciting thing happening at Build that people will see the demo of and be excited. But there are other just, usual things. We're looking at the model context protocol now too. Like, can we have an MCP server for Aspire that actually knows Aspire really well and can help you, especially with scaffolding? Like, hey, bot, add Aspire into this repo instead of you having to right click or set up the builder, or hey, I want it so that this Redis cache runs as this and publishes as this, and having it do that config for you, especially for discovery if you haven't used Aspire before. Most of the AIs that are out there right now were trained on early versions of the Aspire docs, so they kind of suck. So we are really improving documentation so that as these things get retrained and new models come out, the Aspire experience in general for dev tooling with like Copilot or Claude or whatever, they're going to keep getting better. But Aspire has a very full and unique picture of your stack. And if you want to feed that data into an LLM in a useful way, it can glean a lot of information that it's just connecting dots that you could probably connect yourself, but it's just going to do it faster. And then you can spend more time fixing the issue, right? So yeah, so stay tuned. I'm very excited. We should probably do a video about it. I'll try and make sure that we get a video on YouTube the week of build so that you can update this with the show notes when that comes out. And people can see what I'm teasing here. But I work for Microsoft, so we're just putting AI in everything now. AI in your coffee, all right?
This might be something that I can say, because I think you had a chat with Jamie from the .NET, well, I can say the .NET Core show, but the modern .NET show now it's called, isn't it? Because he posted on socials, and he's got a Discord as well, so he mentioned in there. But something like a Llama integration, is that something that can be?
It's there. It's in the community toolkit. It works. I use it. I am an AI skeptic as far as tech people go, right? I had not used Ollama because I was like, it's going to burn my computer to the ground. Like, I don't need it. I'll hit an endpoint. And I added the integration, and I did a run as Ollama and spun it up locally, and it worked. And I was like, that's weird. That shouldn't work that easily, right? And then it did. And then I published it to Azure OpenAI, and I was like, oh my God, I'm magic. I'm all powerful. So yeah, the Ollama integration exists today in the community toolkit. And it's great. Aaron Powell, who's one of our cloud dev advocates, has basically become like the community toolkit guy internally. And if you're not sure what a community toolkit is, it's a model. We didn't invent it on Aspire. So a lot of the Windows UI toolkits existed there first. But the idea is that it's a .NET Foundation repo that has a committee. It has a steering committee, and it's a certain level of rigor or, I don't know, compliance quality for something to go in it. On the Maui side, we had one for like a lot of Maui UI controls. There's one for MVVM that helps with bootstrapping your like view model and doing iNotify property change junk. So we have one for Aspire where we have a very high bar on what we want to maintain in the official Aspire code base, mostly because there are only so many of us, and for us to maintain all of these packages would be a complete nightmare. It would mean we couldn't work on features. So we're allowing the community to contribute integrations into the community toolkit, which is crazy. There are so many things in there right now already. And it's a certain level of quality, so we bless it. So when you right-click add Aspire package, or if you look for an Aspire a NuGet package, community toolkit packages show up alongside it. Aspire is an owner of it. And so it is a like official-ish. It's official. It's about as official as it can be without being in the repo, which means that Ollama isn't like some hack that everyone's getting really popular. It's like, it's the blessed Ollama integration from the Aspire team. We also have a model where vendors, like I think Elasticsearch is working on theirs, or maybe they just came out with it. I don't know. But you, as a person with a company that builds an integration, can own your integration and ship it yourself. And we will co-own it so that it comes up in the list with everything else on NuGet. So AWS does that, for example. They ship their integration for Aspire out of their own code and their own source. So it doesn't have to be contributed and out of their control, but it still has Aspire as a owner and pops up in that list with everything. So we have a very cool, like, I don't know. I'm very proud of our community / contribution model because it took a lot of arguments to get there.
Nice. So you mentioned AWS then, actually, and that's one thing I've not tried because I've not really used AWS. I'm more an Azure person. And in the course, I did go through and demo the Kubernetes publisher, although it was very early days, so I had to do a few fixes. But in the course, I actually showed what I was fixing because I wanted to be like honest.
Cool.
But then I also showed the Aspirate as well, which just worked, that one, because obviously that's a bit more mature, I guess. and then the Docker Compose one, and then the manifest stuff, and AZD, all that stuff, AZD,
Wow.
AZD, and showed all that spinning up in Azure. But obviously, I don't know AWS, so I didn't want to try and do it and say something completely wrong because I don't understand the fundamentals. But is the AWS story, does that work now, or?
Yeah. So there's like an AWS.NET team, and they are awesome. We love them. And what they built originally was an AWS integration. So Aspire hosting AWS or whatever it's called, and it bumps out to the CDK, to their CDK. What it also does is lights up their Visual Studio tooling that they have, and probably Rider tooling, actually. I haven't actually tried it myself, but I know it lights up their Visual Studio tooling and all of the right-click deploy or status things there. So they built all of that and they ship it, and we love it. We did call them like a month ago and we're like, so we are totally changing deployment. And they were like, are you kidding? We were like, we're not kidding, but the nice thing is their existing CDK stuff that they have, the integration is going to keep working. It's just they can now extend it to also support the publisher model. Same as AZD. AZD is not going to break. We're not breaking AZD. AZD is awesome, but we're also extending it for this Aspire first publisher model.
Yeah, that's really cool. What is out of all the things we've spoken about, what's your favorite thing about Aspire?
Oh my God. That's actually a really hard question. I think my favorite thing is that to demo eShop, which is a sample app that we built, but it's actually like a real-ish sample app. It has AI and caches and, it's legit. It's github.com/.net/eShop. All I have to do is clone it and hit F5. And I don't know when the last time I was able to do that with anything was. And so I actually demoed it for an internal conference. I'm not bold enough to do that externally, but I demoed it the other day. I said, here's this repo. I'm on my Windows machine. Here is the repo not on my machine. I cloned it. I hit F5 and it spun up. And I was like, that's pretty cool. Like, that's really cool. And then you start pairing that with things like code spaces or dev containers. And I can go and run eShop on my iPad. What? Like, what planet am I on? So that to me is always the favorite part, is just like, it's a platform, right? It's code. We're building like a code thing, but it's really tooling and it's crazy and I love it. So, yeah.
That's one of the things, like very early on in the course, one of the videos where I'm just basically highlighting the things that jump out at me that I love about Aspire before we start digging into it. And one of them, that one was open telemetry, which I've already spoken about, and that being the local dev story. But what you just said then, and actually in that video, I demoed that Aspire shop spinning it up, exactly what you just said.
Yes!
I literally demo like, I can git clone this shop repo, you try it and press F5 and it just spun up. And that's part of that, like dual for onboarding and stuff. So yeah, that is so good. Yeah. And you can use like Docker stuff, and the new developer doesn't need to understand Docker because they don't need to do a Docker Compose up or do any of that stuff. Yes. It's just .NET Run or F5 or Aspire Run now.
Aspire Run.
Actually, I've just remembered the thing I couldn't remember before a minute ago. I've just remembered what it was. So when you do .NET Run, it's like the normal, even though it's the app host, it's the normal .NET output that .NET developers used to. If you do Aspire Run, you get this nice, it looks like Spectre Console, Patrick
It is Spectre Console. So, yeah.
So a nice table showing all your resources and hyperlinks to each of your resources and all that kind of thing. And the status, like whether they're spinning up or whether it's pending or all of that stuff, all in the terminal, which is amazing.
Yeah, we actually argued about that for a long time because I thought it was too noisy. I was not sold on. I mean, Spectre Console, let me be clear. We were having so much fun with just UI, terminal, like 2-way stuff. I'm like, can we make this spinner purple? Oh my gosh, loading bars? This is amazing. Like, we're having way too much fun with that. The table in the terminal, I was like, I don't want that. That's noisy. I don't want noise. I don't want noise. No noise. And then I started getting used to it and I was like, I really like that if I'm just trying to if I'm in my app and I want to open my front end, I don't have to switch to the dashboard to get the endpoint. I can just click it in the terminal and open it. And so it doesn't do the telemetry viewing and all that, but it is a good just state of what your app is. And I was like, oh, I think I am sold on this. I was trying to get them to put it behind a flag for so long. Oh my God. And they were like, no, this is good. And I was like, you are wrong. I'm the CLI person. And then they were like, well, what about being able to see the endpoint without having to open the dashboard? And I was like, yeah, you're right. Yep, this is good. So it's very nice. We have a lot of, I think, refining around the edges for the CLI still. It works. I use it now primarily. There are definitely things we need to clean up and make more fully featured, but it looks great. And that is the most important thing to me. So
if it helps, that Spectre console table is the only reason I type Aspire run rather than .NET run. We'll actually do a run.
Oh, you aliased it? Smart.
Yeah, well, I've got aliases for so .NET is like in my PowerShell profile. DN is .NET, D is Docker, DC is Docker Compose, K is kubectl for Kubernetes. I've got H for Helm, but now I've got A for Aspire. So I type a run, and boom, I get the Spectre console view. So it's
okay, wow. I'm gonna have to really eat my opinion on this one. That's good. I'm glad that it's useful. And I'm glad that I made the right decision by caving. At some point, we want to hook it up to VS Code too. So if you F5 in VS Code, you'll get that same terminal output. But, we need to make the colors all match first. So
Spectre console is so good. I'm trying to remember what episode. Patrick did come on the show.
You had Patrick on? Oh my God.
Talking about Spectre console.
It's so good. We've worked with Chet Husk, who, if you have been around like the .NET runtime and CLI community, you know Chet. And we called him up and we're like, Chet, we're building a command line. And he was like, I hate you guys. I'm so jealous because you can kind of do whatever you want. And we were like, yep. And he was like, so you're going to use Spectre console, right? And we were like, yep. He was like, I'm so jealous. Sorry, Chet. Love you. So.
Yeah, I've just checked. That was episode 14. So it was quite a while ago.
Wow.
Yeah, talking about the Spectre console and Cake, although the episode was mainly about Spectre console. But yeah, it is.
Yeah.
So like the document, we talked about documentation before. The documentation for that is spot on because
it's so good.
If you want to know how to do something, you go to it and within a second, you've got that snippet running in your application. It's just so quick and easy.
It's so good. It's really, really good. And so we're not using Spectre Console CLI because that's not native AOTable. We're using System Command Line, which is not stable yet. It will be soon, I think. I don't know when the actual date is, but they're working on tidying it up. But the docs for a while were not up to date with the latest version of System Command Line. So Copilot could not vibe code for me. Horrific. I had to write code by myself. But I was just like control dot, like I was just reading function definitions to make it work. And then you like go to do something in Spectre and I go to the docs. I'm like, okay, that was 2 seconds. Wonderful. But I think they've mostly updated all the SCL stuff now. So it's in a much better state.
I want to know how many times we can get the term vibe coding in this episode.
Oh God, I hate it. I hate that I've become this person, but I totally am. So
I'm sorry to keep on mentioning things in the course, but I actually do some vibe coding in the course.
Oh, very good.
Near the end for the episode, or not the episode, what am I talking about? For the section video where I'm showing running like Node stuff, so non.NET stuff as part of it. And I thought, well, because most of the course is me using a Blazor app for the front end, I want this podcast listening app, I want a Node version of it. So as part of the course, I get up VS Code, turn on agent mode, and get that to build a Node app. And then I put that into Aspire. Yeah. That's good fun.
I do that all the time. It's obviously never going to be production code. It needs a human being in the opinions. But just some of the stupid stuff that comes with laying out divs and everything, it does it. And then it becomes, you're the editor. You don't have to start everything from scratch. And it's so nice. I've totally drank the Kool-Aid, unfortunately. But I do love all the videos of people making fun of vibe coding because it is so true. So
it is at the moment, and you said it will always need human interaction. It does, yeah, at the moment, but I don't, the way things are going, the speed things are changing, how long is that going to be the case? The difference between now and 6 months ago is insane.
That is true.
Versus 6 months before that, versus 6 months before that. And like now it's kind of like using this VS Code agent mode. Okay, at the moment I need to like iterate on it. Like one time I tried it, it actually created a Node app, which was a console app, a podcast listing. I had to say then, no, I meant a web app. And I literally just said, no, I meant a web app, enter. And then it said, oh, sorry, and rewrote it and added Express and did all this for me. I did all this stuff. And then it worked and was fine. But it didn't look too nice. So then I had to say, can you make that look really good using Bootstrap? And it went off and did it and installed stuff. And just, I could go and get a coffee and come back and it was done. It was brilliant.
Yeah, it's amazing. And now that they're going to be able to like talk to specialized agents or whatever, I think that's going to bring it a lot further. Until we all talk about things differently. And so when I say I want a web app with a to-do list and I want it to look like something, I can be as descriptive as I want, and a human being will still interpret that differently than a different human being. And a bot will interpret that differently than the same bot, depending on what its, algorithm spits out that day. And so unless we come up with, the perfect words to describe everything always, I can't imagine AI not requiring some amount of editing. I love to use it. I love the term Copilot. I think that's actually one of the best names that Microsoft has ever done, because we are horrible at names. But Copilot's really good because that's really what it feels like. It feels like it's doing the dirty work for me, and I'm just checking in and keeping it on track. And the less I have to check in, great. But I don't know. I don't think my boss will ever let something that I write go to all the way up to leadership without him just taking a cursory glance at it and sanity checking it, even though he trusts me, right? And that's kind of how I feel about myself in Copilot. So I'll trust it, but I'm going to give it okay, yeah, that looks right. So.
Yeah. Where you were mentioning about if you phrase things slightly different, and that's true at the moment, you can like literally, if you have one word that's different. I think Scott Hanselman's talks, we went to NDC London, so obviously he did talks there, where he was talking about this, and he gave examples where he was running everything locally and he was just changing one word and stuff, and it completely changed. And it showed in his output, it was showing the biases of the probability of what it would choose for the next word and that kind of thing.
Right.
But I'm assuming that it's going to end up with like different layers where you'd have AI looking at your prompt and rewording it in the best way that can then be prompted back again.
Yeah. I've asked ChatGPT to write a prompt for Copilot before, which I think is very fun. I'll be like, I want to build an app that does this, and I'll go and I'll discuss it with ChatGPT, and we'll iterate on it, and I'll send it pictures and screenshots in the browser, and then I'll be like, cool, make this into a markdown document that I can give to Copilot, and it does. I'm like, wow, very fancy. So yeah, it's cool. I mean, ideally, what happens is we spend less time writing. Oh, I haven't sworn yet. I almost did, but I'm not going to.
Oh, it's okay. I can beep it out or whatever.
No, but ideally we spend less time doing boring stuff and more time solving exciting problems in code, or doing the stuff that we do like, or going on vacations or something. I don't know. Maybe we get a 4-day work week finally. Maybe that's how this happens. So I'm hoping that as a society, we use AI to free ourselves up from stuff that isn't fun. That would be great.
I think we'll just produce more stuff because all companies have a massive backlog of things they'll never get to. So it's not like there's not enough work to do. So if AI can speed that up, okay, we get through the backlog faster, but there's going to be more. There's always more stuff.
There's always more. I know. I'm looking at it very optimistically that someone's going to be like, we're saving so much time. Everybody should enjoy themselves.
You don't need salaries, do you? No, go off on holiday. Oh, hang on.
Wait, no. I mean, I'm in the US, so they're probably going to make a 6-day work week before a 4-day work week, but we'll see.
Yeah, I remember like years ago, I was just looking into like, this was 20 years ago or something, potentially moving to the States. And I looked at the number of holidays you typically get. And that was like, okay, no, deal breaker.
Yep. It's
is it like 10 or 11 or that kind of thing per year?
Yeah, I think I'm up to 15 now, which is pretty exciting. Or actually, no, we switched now. At Microsoft, we do discretionary, which means that if your manager says it's okay, it's okay. But that also means that you don't get vacation rollovers or anything anymore. So if you were to leave, you can't cash out 15 vacation days and make a check on it. And if you don't use them, if you don't take vacation because you're just like, I don't have to use my 15 days or I'm going to lose them, so I'll just take vacation when I do, then I just never take a vacation because I keep forgetting. Well, I'm going on vacation next week, so that's a vacation. My favorite part is the like July and August part of the year where all of the Europeans are just on vacation for 3 weeks. They're all like, see you later. And we're like, We'll hold down the fort, guys. Have so much fun.
This is one thing I like about being, because I'm a contractor, so
yeah,
I don't really have like 10 days or 25 days or whatever it is per year. It's if I don't work, I don't get paid. But it's super simple. So it's kind of, obviously I've got to allow for that in my finances and budgeting, but it's not a case of, oh, I've only got 1 day left or whatever. It's kind of like, well, if I want to go on holiday, I can, but I don't get paid for it. So
yeah. Well, sometimes it's worth it. So,
Yeah, definitely. The thing I struggle with, though, with exactly that is conferences. Because I would love to go to more conferences, but I've got to then think, well, it's not just the cost of the conference. And some conferences there's no cost, but some there are. But there's also my daily rate times however many number of days it is.
Right. Exactly. Conferences are so valuable and yet so challenging to fit in. And because my full-time job is not to speak at conferences or to do podcasts, as much as that would be fun. I do actually have to like do product work most of my time. And so when I do go to a conference, it becomes this like, okay, I need to make sure that this gets done, but like these things are going to fall off the radar and I'm going to have to deal with them later. And finding that balance is really hard. And then when I do go on vacation and I have to travel with someone else, like my husband, and he like asks me what to pack, I'm like, I don't know. I don't travel with people. Oh God. I can't just show up to the airport like 5 minutes before my flight boards and walk on. You want to get there how early? And so it's really ruined me in that way too, but that's okay.
Going on a holiday with your own family, it's awful, isn't it?
I know. Going on vacation is so I texted Damian Edwards and David Fowler yesterday, and I was like, oh my God, the 48 hours leading up to vacation are so stressful. I have so much to do. And Damian literally responds like first world problems. And I go, I know. You're right, but they are problems. They're first world problems for sure, though.
So I've got to ask this: what's it like working? Because obviously you're working with David Fowler, James Newton King, is it?
Yeah. Yep.
James Newton King. You're working with lots of like very high profile people in the .NET space. What's it like day to day?
Honestly, like people always ask me, they're like, oh my God, like is Fowler a genius? And I'm like, I mean, yeah, he's really smart, but he's also kind of an idiot. Like he does stupid things. I've watched him try to like create a sign-in before for like a web portal. Like he was sharing a screen. He's like, oh, I need to make an account. And like watching him try to create an account on a website was like watching my mom try to use my phone. And I was just like, oh my God, oh, you do need me. And like James is brilliant too. James is in Singapore, so his time zone is completely opposite of me. But I'll always wake up to like something funny he said in a chat somewhere, or just like a meme or a PR with just a bunch of really good stuff. And so it's really fun. I mean, we're lucky on the .NET team. Everybody is brilliant. And it's almost difficult because everybody is so brilliant. Sometimes we overthink things by our nature, and it takes a lot for us to collectively be like, okay, like Fowler will be talking about publishers or something, and I'll be like, well, publishers are just a part of the resource model and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yes, but do you think like a person who didn't build Aspire is going to think about it that way? And it's hard, but they're all great and nice and fun. And I love story time. So whenever they start reminiscing about like the .NET Core days and all of that, I'm always like, oh my God, you old men. I love it. Keep telling me the stories.
I love all the memes that go backwards and forwards between you guys on Blue Sky. I think there was the one with Fowler with his hands in his head like that went out recently.
Yep, that's a good one. He does make that face to me regularly, but that one was not my fault. I will not take credit for it. So
I just realised I've referred to him as Fowler and I've never met him, so I should really David or Mr. Fowler.
Mr. Fowler, Dr. Fowler. No, there's too many Davids. We have a group chat right now with I think 4 Davids in it. Like we have Dave Ortnow, Dave Pine, David Fowler. Is it just 3? I think it might be, but it's impossible. They all go by their last names. Pine is Pine, Fowler's Fowler, Ortnow's Ortnow. Sorry, guys.
I realised I didn't want to sound rude by calling him Fowler, because I don't know whether people do or whether that's okay. Or
that's fine. You can call him Fowler. He'll live.
I just realised when we took at conferences, I'm wearing my NDC top that we got given when we went.
Oh, I wore mine this morning.
Oh, I love this hoodie. It's so comfortable.
It's so comfortable. The NDC hoodies are always so soft. But anyways.
Yeah, I missed a whole day. I told you when we were last chatting. So I was gutted I missed your talk because I really wanted to see that. But on the Wednesday night, we went for a Dome Train author dinner. And Nick was quite generous with the cocktails. So I was rather ill the next day.
That means it's a good conference. That's how you know you did networking.
Definitely, yeah. It was really good fun, so definitely worth it. But I saw your one with Scott Hunter, and that was funny. Like with the the dynamic toing and throwing, especially when you were doing the health check bit, and then it's like taking over, and it's like, no, I'm still showing. Yeah.
Hunter and I we love co-presenting because we both are very similar, but we're both also very similar in that we just kind of go with the flow. And when you have two people going with the flow, it can get very chaotic. Usually, like, I need to present with someone who's like very structured and is like, so we're going to do this now. And I'm like, okay, I know what I'm doing. But with Hunter, we're both like, show this. No, show this. No, show this. We just do that the whole time.
That's part of the joy of watching it. It's like, if it's just boring and someone doing like a marketing talk, that's not fun. But so yeah, definitely. I've realized I can't see my timer because it's slid up. 1 hour and 20 minutes we've been going for this.
Wow.
It's been really good fun talking. Is there anything that we've not covered? It's kind of like, I feel I need to get my course up so I can actually look through the table of contents. I think we've covered most stuff, haven't we? Publishers. In fact, I am going to get my, where's my Notion? Modules. We've covered integrations, blah, 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 service discovery, configuration, observability, eventing. So very quickly, I guess there's this thing called events where it's like...
Yeah, the commands. Yeah. So... in the dashboard, custom commands is cool because you can programmatically tell resources to do things while they're running. So we see people do it for like resetting databases and caches a lot. So pretending that your cache is emptied or forcing that. And then just click it in the dashboard. It's kind of nice. It's just code. More and more just code.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that actually because that was another thing which I got in the list here. But what I was thinking when I said eventing, I was thinking about the eventing API where you can hook into different lifecycle events.
Yes. Oh, yeah. I mean, the resources we expose the resources lifecycle. That's pretty much what it is. And so, and the same way that in a UI you would do on appearing or on page load or on navigated too, you can kind of do that with on restart or, restart and then all that declarative stuff makes it so that particularly for local dev, you can make it very automated once you hit F5. Those kinds of things, ideally, your services are not going down and regularly in production, and you probably have a more production way to handle those things. But being able to do that locally is super powerful.
Yeah, definitely. I think all these things with Aspire, it's kind of, we've got like the big things like the dashboard and open telemetry and service discovery and all this and deployment, but there's so many little tiny like really nice things. How many, like the 9.2 in the dashboard, you've got the resource graph. How many hours? I'm sorry, that's actually killed my productivity because I sit there just dragging them all around because it looks so cool. So
it's so fun. Yeah. No, James has actually had that in PR for like 8 months. And we just keep being like, oh yeah, let's ship that. Oh, we need to ship that. Oh, we need to ship it. And so we did some changes with named URLs and named endpoints. And that was a really good catalyst for us to be like, let's also do that, get that out of a PR finally. Pull that over the hump.
Cool. So we should probably wrap up. I don't know whether did you see in the FAQ about dev tips or pick?
Yeah. Yes. How do you kick those off?
Well, I normally let the guests go first.
We already talked about Spectre, which was kind of my exciting dev tip.
Sorry.
That Spectre's cool. That's okay. There is a Spectre type thing for Go. It is called Charms SH.
Ooh, I've not heard of this.
It is adorable. It is so cute. Their like terminal UI components are called like the bubble tea components. It's so funny. And I desperately would love like a version of Spectre that's just adorableified for my own purpose, not for us to use in the Aspire CLI because we are already doing plenty of Spectres fully featured. But the idea of like a component toolkit that's just like cutesy .NET stuff, that speaks to me spiritually as a millennial who grew up using the command line, right? And by grew up, I mean like went to college and used the command line and not an IDE. I I was afraid of the command line for my youth, as I should be. But those are like the kinds of things that I love seeing. And we're getting more of those in the .NET community, just more like kitschy stuff. And I think that makes it fun. So I know that's not a .NET open source project, but if any of you are cute and fun and want to cutify things, you should, because Charms is adorable. Or charm.sh, I think. Charm or charms.sh.
Yeah, I've just found it. I've not heard about it before, but it's charm.sh. And there's a section, if you scroll down, saying charm libs. And there's bubble tea,
yes,
lip gloss, wish, glamour, bubble, log, harmonica. I don't know what that would look like.
Yeah.
And clicking on each of these goes to a GitHub repository. So it's all open source, even these charm libs or libraries.
Yeah. So that's the kind of stuff that I love seeing. And I mean, we have plenty of fun things in our community. This one just piqued my interest recently because we've been doing terminal UI stuff. And I was like, oh my God, this is so cute. How fun. More of that. More fun.
Mine sounds a bit more, I don't want to offend anyone by saying a bit more boring after that one, but it's not boring, actually. It's really cool. But do you use Windows or?
Yeah.
Use Windows. Do you use PowerToys?
Yes.
So they've got a new command palette, which is kind of like, what's the Mac version? The Spotlight, is it called?
Oh, Command Space.
Yeah, the command, Alt space, and you get this pop-up, and you can type anything you want. So you can search for stuff, you can add bookmarks, you can launch stuff.
I didn't even know this happened. It popped up.
If you've just pressed Alt space, you've got the old runner. I've actually changed my shortcut, so the new thing's Alt space as well. So try Windows Alt space, the Win key Alt and space. That's the new one.
Okay, nothing's popped up. Windows Alt space. Maybe I have to turn it on. Hold on. Okay, that's very exciting. I love PowerToys. Didn't they just add Zoom It too?
Yes, yeah, that's been added on. So I use that very heavily, and that's just in there and everything. So that's so cool.
Absolutely nutso.
There's so many different like shortcuts and things you can enable. I found one the other day where there's a shortcut. I can't remember what it is. I'll have to look it up. But it gives you like the thing where you can do like a marquee around whatever's on your screen. So almost like you're taking a screenshot, except what you draw around, it will copy text of whatever it is. So remember, it's a screenshot, but it's reading the text. I don't know if it's using AI or something, and copying the text into your clipboard. So you can press a shortcut, draw a marquee around anything. It could be text in an image or something, and it will put that text into your clipboard.
It's so cool. I love it. I mean, it's truly a bunch of powerful toys. Like, that is the only way to describe it. And I love it. So, yeah.
So I guess that command palette is my dev tip and PowerToys. But I guess to extend on that, once you install PowerToys, I would say load it up and look through all the different, because there's so many different features. Don't just install it and use one thing. Go through and look at all the different settings, and it's just absolutely insane.
It's amazing. I really love it. So now I have to go play with that all day. So thanks.
Well, my job for the rest of the day is installing Alarma and playing with that in Aspire. Thanks to what
Perfect. Perfect. I love it.
I do have client work to do, but
nah. That's Monday's problem.
So before we wrap up, where is the best place for listeners to reach out?
So for general Aspire stuff, the best thing to do is going to be GitHub by a landslide. We are super active on the GitHub. So start there, go there. For me personally, you can find me on Blue Sky at maddymontaquila.net. I am not great at my DMs, as Dan knows. So, because they're usually
we got there in the end.
Yeah, they're like 90% totally fine, but like there's just 10% of. So I only go through them periodically, but feel free to @ me, and I usually see those. And then you can also get me Maddy at Microsoft.com. So Maddy at Microsoft.com if you need anything like NDA or super, you're not sure if it's GitHub appropriate or whatever. So yeah, reach out, definitely. I'm going to ask you to file something on GitHub if you email me like, I'm having an issue with Aspire. So do that first. But once you do that, then you can email me. So.
And you're also on the podcast Discord as well now, although
I am, yeah.
Listeners, please don't nag Maddy too much because then she'll leave.
I mean, you can nag me a little bit. A little bit.
Cool. Well, with that, just a massive thank you for joining me on the show. It's kind of an hour and a half has just flown by. That's insane.
I know, that was fast. That was a good job.
we've covered a lot of stuff. So I'm really pleased with that. I just hope, I always get nervous when we stop recording that the recording is somehow messed up and it's like...
Hey, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. It'll be fine.
It will, definitely. I will let you know as soon as we get off the call. And also thank you everyone for listening. A quick reminder that this podcast is sponsored by Everstack, which is my own company providing software development and consultation services. For more information, visit everstack.com. And if you're enjoying the podcast, please do help me spread the word on the socials. I normally use the hashtag #unhandledexception, and I can be found on Blue Sky at danclark.com. But the best place to get in touch with me is Discord. And we'll include links to all the things we mentioned today in the show notes, which can be found on unhandledexceptionpodcast.com.